Eric, I have opinions about kaiju with rockets that shoot out of their butts. Invite me on. Anyway, we're going to have an explicit tag on this one. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Travis, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Michael Ham and Cheese Sandwich.
You see, I feel like you had something way more creative in there earlier, and I was prepared for that. Specifically, I was going to break out my foghorn leghorn voice. I declare. And yeah, you totally changed it on me. I was prepared for one thing, and you just...
I'm keeping you on your toes. I'm keeping you on your toes.
I see that. I see that, man. You doing okay?
I am tired. Story of my life, but I am tired.
That's sort of par of the course, I feel like, for you these days.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty tired myself. It's been a pretty busy. Well, I won't say busy because I don't feel like I've been very productive today at all. Because I've just been hanging out here at the house. Lisa went to work this afternoon. She works evening shift today, and decided to kind of just go out. I went to the gym today, and that was fun. And then after the gym, I went to the bookstore, as I've been doing for the last few Sundays, just to peruse around. And as I showed you earlier, as I showed you earlier, I found a pretty awesome little find, which is the Harryhausen.
Yes.
The Harryhausen Lost Films book. Yeah.
I have been wanting to read this book for a while, and I haven't been able to. I just haven't been able to afford to get it. There's always been more important things to spend that money on, but I'm really interested to see what little nuggets of information you find in there.
It's really fun because I was just on a podcast the other night with Henry from It Came From a Monster Movie, and we did Clash of the Titans. And during the fun facts section, I guess you could call it fun facts, during the discussion, there we go. Him and Danny both broke out that book, and I thought, man, I really wish I had that book. So I went on Amazon. I saw how much it was, which, $35 on Amazon is really not that bad. For some reason, I didn't go ahead and order it. Maybe I thought, well, I'll just do it tomorrow or something like that. Well, anyway, I went out to the bookstore today and was just kind of perusing around in the fiction fantasy section, and there it was. I'm like, well, holy crap, this is it's destiny. So I went ahead and got it. I actually found it for a better price than it is on Amazon, so that's a plus.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I need to get that book. I have that in my wish list, and I have the one about the behind the scenes kind of making of story of Tremors that I have on my Amazon wish list that I want to get. So those are two books I'm really looking forward to reading.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that book on, like, as I'm looking for books or odd, just random things that have to do with giant monsters and kaiju. I feel like I've seen that book before, but I'm not a huge Tremors fan. So yeah, that's more right up your alley for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're going to talk a little bit about books and kaiju related things in just a minute in the news section. So, sure. You ready to go ahead and get into it?
Yeah, let's cue the beady beady.
All right, let's cue the beady beady. All right, we're going to start off with some sad news because we have had news that actor Yosuke Saito, who is best known in the kaiju community for playing the villainous Dr. Susumu.
He played Dr. Akubo.
Akubo. That's right. There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He played
Um,
Dr. Akubo in the Heisei film Godzilla versus Space Godzilla from '94.
right. Yeah, he's passed away after a battle with cancer. He was 69 years old. So a little bit of sad news. It's interesting that, or not interesting, but it's kind of sad because we're getting just really great work from one of the other actors from Godzilla versus Space Godzilla in Ultraman Z
Mm-hmm.
or Ultraman Z. And then
Right.
while that's happening, we also have another actor from that movie that's passed away now because of cancer. So just, yeah, just more, just a little bit of sad news.
I mean, we are thankful for the work that he did for that film. It may not be my favorite Heisei film, but I still respect everything that he contributed to that, to that film, because honestly, it is many fans' favorite films within the franchise. And so, we just appreciate everything that he contributed to that. And, we honor him and we thank him for providing us that entertainment. And we pray for his family and we hope and we wish them well. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like I said, that's our bit of sad news to start off with, but we are going to be moving on to some collector news now, so a little bit lighter news. We finally get to see our first look at this new premium collectible that's been kind of making the rounds online, so I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but it is from Spiral Studios. It's their ultimate masterclass Battle in Boston series, Burning Godzilla. And this thing looks amazing.
It's not even fully painted. Like, we're only getting like I'm assuming what is the 3D rendering of this figure, and it's supposed to emulate the scene at the end of the Battle in Boston where Burning Godzilla, or Thermonuclear Godzilla, as he is referred to by a lot of folks, charges up to defeat King Ghidorah, and you've got like the big burning Mothra wings coming out of his back to help him focus his energy on King Ghidorah. This is a really interesting and unique sculpt. I'm wondering, because in this graphic here, it has Matt Frank's name attached to it. So I'm wondering maybe he sketched it out for them, and then their 3D artist took that sketch and rendered it out in probably like using ZBrush or something like that. And this is sort of what we see with the artist that did the Orga and the Barugon. Dope Pope. If you're familiar with the work of Dope. Yeah, if you're familiar with the work of Dope Pope on Instagram, it's very similar to I don't know if he had any contribution to this. It doesn't say so. I would assume if he had his hands on this, it would say, because Dope Pope is a pretty well-known artist within the kaiju community, or within just the digital sculpting community. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful.
This was done by Tanaka Studios.
Okay,
that's who did the like 3D rendering of it.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, I think because like I said, it does say in partnership with Matt Frank. I think you were right on the money there with Matt Frank doing the sketch of it. This is the first time ever seeing Godzilla with wings, and while they're not literal wings per se in the movie, but the way this figure is designed, they're wings. They are fiery, burning wings on the back of this Godzilla. And I am not a collector. I'm not a collector of figures or anything, and I definitely do not have the money for this. But man, would I love to have this. Now, we do not have a price tag on it, so that's another thing. We don't know how much it is, but you can bet this is going to be expensive.
Yeah, because the Spiral King Ghidorah from 2019. I think that the price for that sucker was like around $1,500 or something like that. I can't remember. It was well out of my price range, so I really didn't pay much attention to it. But I know of collectors who have placed the order for one. They're yet to receive it because of COVID and all that stuff. But if I had to take a guess, depending on how big this guy is going to be, probably he's going to be at least $1,000, if not a little bit more, because there was with the King Ghidorah, there was a standard version and a deluxe version, and then what do they call it? The ultimate? There was an ultimate version as well, and I think the ultimate version came with like a little diorama of the not Wrigley Field. Fenway Park. There we go. Yeah. It came with a little diorama. So yeah, that jacked the price up. But man, just from a sculpting perspective, just from a sculpt, oh boy, this thing is interesting, and it's really, really beautifully done.
Yeah, it makes me want to see a Godzilla with wings in a movie now, even if it is a weird anime movie like this. Tell me that is not something that the anime trilogy would have done if they had thought about it, like Godzilla with wings.
Yeah, if they would have thought about it, I believe that they probably would have done that. I think wasn't there rumors when there was still a possibility for Shin Godzilla 2? Wasn't there a rumor that his fifth or sixth form? I can't remember. I think it was his fifth or sixth form, maybe his sixth form. He was supposed to sprout wings. Oh, I'm like, okay, that's weird, but. Yeah, I mean it's cool. It captures a really interesting moment from that film, and I love that film, and I cannot wait to see this thing fully painted up and admire its beauty, and wish that I had $2,000 to drop on it, but it is what it is, and such is life.
Yep. Moving on to the next bit of news, Junkie XL was interviewed in Forbes magazine about his work on Godzilla vs. Kong. So in this interview, he did mention that he has been a longtime fan of Godzilla, but in the also in the interview, he mentions, this is a quote from him, "On Godzilla vs. Kong, I said, I think we need the biggest bass drum on the planet for this score. I know the guy who can build it. What do you think?" They just said, "Let's do it." So I said, "I want a bass drum that is at least 8 feet in diameter." He laughed. The guy called me back and he asked, "Is it okay if it's only 6? I said, "Could we do 8? Why can't we do 10? The answer was, well, there's simply no cow alive that has a skin big enough to cover for a 10-foot bass drum. So we have to scale it down to 8. It was worth the money." So it just seems like exactly what we said when we first heard that Junkie XL was doing the score for this movie is he's known for kind of big bombastic sounds, and he is bringing it all to this film. So it's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge score.
I hope so. Look, if this is supposed to be the last official legendary Godzilla film, official MonsterVerse film, I mean, balls to the wall, man. I say throw every bell and whistle that you can possibly throw at this thing, and give the fans exactly what we want, and give the normies an awesome movie to go watch, even if you're not a giant monster film, or even if you're not a giant monster fan. And after reading this comment by Junkie XL, I'm excited. I really am excited. I'm waiting with bated breath for that first preview of the soundtrack to hit Spotify, like what it did with King of the Monsters and Old Rivals, because I remember when I heard that, and I thought, because it goes into this really, I'm not even doing it justice, but it goes into this slow build, and then finally this big bombastic entrance music, and then you stack Ifukabe's music on top of that. I was like, my God, this movie's going to be awesome. So if yeah, you're right. You know, Junkie XL has a reputation for big bombastic scores, and I like that. I like it when things are a little bit over the top. And, you know, this genre is perfect for that because honestly, you know, giant monster movies and things of this nature, they are perfect for just things being over the top.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to have an over the top score for any movie, of course it has to be this one. This is the movie to do that. This is the movie to just do whatever you've ever dreamed of in film scoring and just throw it in there because this is going to be just an epic film. I'm hoping. And so I'm really I'm already excited for this movie. And as much as I loved the score for King of the Monsters, I have a feeling that this is going to be even better than that.
I just want at least one nod to 1962, like the Kong theme from 1962. Even if it's just a little bit, I just want it because I think that would make it perfect. Now, the score for Kong Skull Island was pretty good. Mm-hmm. I will have to admit that's one of my favorite movie scores, at least for a giant monster film. That's one of my favorite movie scores is for Kong Skull Island, especially the song. I can't remember what it's called, but the one that plays when they first arrive on the island and they do the big reveal of Kong against that sunset. And I loved that score so much. And I really hope that they just dial it all the way up to 12 for Godzilla versus Kong, because I want this series to go out with a bang.
I thought the song that you were talking about for Kong Skull Island was the "Some Folks Are Born Silver Spoon in Hand." Well,
if I was gonna pick any one of those, it would have probably been "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath when they first arrive onto the island.
Yeah. I love that.
That was a welcome addition.
Yeah, that was good. Oh man. So there's nothing more to say. I don't like covering any more Godzilla versus Kong news because there's not much more to say about the movie, but I do like talking about the Junkie XL and the score because I think that is something that's going to be so interesting because I think it's going to be different from Bear McCreary. And I think that's what's going to be interesting about it. That's what's got my interest peaked in it, is because it sounds like what Junkie XL is planning is so different from what we got in King of the Monsters. And I was such a huge fan of what Bear did in King of the Monsters that I'm hesitant, but I'm also really excited to see what Junkie XL does.
I'm more excited than maybe I was a few months ago.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next bit of news. So we have been talking about this this independent short film for a while, and we did talk about a few weeks ago that it was finally getting a North American release. This is Howl from Beyond the Fog, and it's coming to us through SRS Cinema. Now, we didn't know when the pre-sales would start for this, but we do have new announcements for that. So SRS Cinema has announced that Blu-ray and VHS pre-sales for Daisuke Sato's Howl from Beyond the Fog should be open next Thursday. Now, next Thursday is tomorrow when this episode is being released. There will be 200 Blu-ray copies and 50 VHS copies available to start. However, 1,000 Blu-rays will be made available if the first 200 sell out within the first week. So, if you are interested and you want to support independent cinema, independent kaiju films, and just the fact that we're getting this in a North American release, which we didn't think we ever would, please go and check this out. Go order it, go purchase it, go do whatever you can do to support this thing, because even if the film, because me and you haven't seen the film, we know people who have seen it, but we haven't actually seen it. But even if this movie is not great, I'd still be more willing to put my money on this because it's being an independent film, an independent monster film, than something that's, like what we talked about last week or a week before, whenever, Conga TNT. I'd rather support this than that.
Well, I don't know. I know that Conga TNT is now, you can order the VHS and you can order the DVD. The Blu-ray is coming soon, but I do know someone who has seen this. In fact, I think it was Danny DeMana told me that he has seen this movie because he was an early adopter for their Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And he says he said to me it was an interesting, unique film.
Yeah.
It is very different than what we've seen before.
And that's what I've heard also from Matt, who over at the Kaiju Transmissions. He got to see it and he has reviewed it, and really that's kind of what he has said too. It's not like anything you've seen. It's very unique, very, very unique. So if you are interested in this, at the time of this episode's release, tomorrow is when the pre-sales go on for it. So I'm going to definitely be checking this out and we're going to be reviewing on the podcast too.
Oh, I assume so. That'll probably be a 2021 episode, or if we can cram it in before the end of the year, if we're both able to see it, we may. Mm-hmm. But as it seems right now, it's probably most likely going to be an early 2021 release for the podcast.
Right. Moving into the next bit of news. So there have been rumors floating around for a while now that the Meg is going to get a sequel. That's the giant shark Jason Statham movie. It was a surprise hit worldwide, even though it didn't do. I don't remember it doing super well domestically, but overseas, I think it did really well.
It did really well in Japan, I believe, and it did really well in I want to say Germany or something like that. It did really well overseas, like you said, but it didn't do so hot here in the States. But that's I guess our market is so saturated with Marvel and Star Wars and and things of that nature. Giant monster movies here in the United States are I feel like they're really difficult to gain traction.
Right. Yeah. And it did look kind of on the sillier side, so I can see why that might have turned some people off. So the sequel, like I said, there's been rumors about a sequel, but the news that we got was that the sequel seems to have gotten a title. Now, this isn't official because things can change, but according to the author of the books, which this is news to me, I did not know that Meg was based on a book, but it's actually based on
me either.
Yeah, there's actually a few books in the series, and the sequel to the book was titled The Trench, and so they're saying that that's the title that the sequel movie is going to be using, and that it may get an R rating, which some people, not necessarily me, but some people felt, usually, especially with these monster movies, they want an R rating for it because then you can push more of the violence and the gore side of it, whereas they were kind of hand tied with the PG-13 rating that they had for the first one. So if it is rated R, then they can definitely cut loose.
I saw the Meg and I actually really enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. It's a fun movie. Mm-hmm. Is it a masterpiece like Jaws or something like that? No, it's not. But it is a fun movie, and I really enjoyed it just for the simple fact that, I'm a fan of Jaws. I'm a fan of that series, that franchise. Mm-hmm. Anyway, maybe not so much Jaws 4 in 3D. That one was a little bit, but I had a lot of fun with the Meg, and I will probably watch the sequel, most likely. I know I'll watch the sequel.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing a sequel. So, and now would Jason Statham come back? We're not sure. If he did, I'm sure it would add even more interest to the film, because I would be interested to see Jason Statham fight another shark. It's just like, why not? Why not throw The Rock into it? The Rock is in every movie franchise. Put The Rock against a giant shark.
I'm so tired of Dwayne Johnson.
You bite your tongue. Look. Okay, first of all, how dare you?
I used to like The Rock. I'm not a huge fan of The Rock anymore. I'm kind of bored with his character. I'm kind of bored with him because he's sort of a one-trick pony anyway. He plays the same exact character in every single movie. Yeah.
Now, see, I don't think that's true. I know we're going off on a tangent, but I don't think that's true. I think the problem with The Rock right now is that he did really well in a particular role, and that's what people want. That's what, all of these directors, these writers, these producers, they hire The Rock not because they want to see him act, and stretch as an actor. They want to have the same character that they had in Fast and the Furious, in the Fast and the Furious movies. And so every character that he does is the same now, but I really think that he has more range than what you're giving him credit for. I think that he's just kind of gotten into a rut of being the action star, which, I mean, to be fair, Arnold Schwarzenegger got into that rut too, so and he broke free eventually of it and started doing more stuff outside of just the action movie star. He's a national treasure. Leave him alone. leave Dwayne Johnson alone. That is such a specific reference. No one is going to get that reference. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so that's it for the news for this week. Let's move into our main topic. So, we asked the trivia question last week. Over 210,000 people participated in a public vote to choose the name of what kaiju in 1967. And we got a few answers. So first we got from and I do want to say I forgot to post this trivia question on the Facebook group, the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. So we actually didn't get as many answers as we normally do, and that was my bad.
Shame on you, Travis. Come on.
But we did get some from Twitter.
Dropping the ball, man.
I know. This week has been something else. So we got our first answer from, and all of them are funny answers. Nobody gave us a serious one, which is fine. Chris Deagle on Twitter said Kaiju McKaiju face, which if you ask people nowadays to name a kaiju, to choose the name of a kaiju, that is exactly what it would be.
Because no one can remember the name of this monster.
Well, I mean, also because look, when they gave the public the vote on naming the Arctic research vessel, and they named it Bodie McBoatface, and then when Macaulay Culkin offered his fans the opportunity to choose his middle name for him, and they chose Macaulay Culkin, so his name is Macaulay Culkin. So yeah, you can't trust the modern public to name anything anymore.
No, you can't. No.
Yeah. So, Kaiju Kim responded with Gorosaurus. Not quite, but good guess.
Nope. Thank you, Kim. We appreciate it.
Yep, we appreciate you. Elijah commented, everybody's favorite kaiju, Mamagon.
I don't know why he's so obsessed with that movie. Oh, wait, no. I'm thinking of the wrong movie. I'm thinking of Megalon, not Gigan. This is Gigan, not Megalon. Okay. I was going to say he is obsessed with Megalon, but Mamagon comes from Godzilla versus Gigan. Right, the anime, the manga artist who, yeah. It's something. You cheeky pig.
Nathan from the Monster Island Film Vault podcast gave us Manila because it came out the same year. Son of Godzilla came out in 1967 as well.
That's true.
If the public named Manila, it would not be something as nice and friendly sounding as Manila.
Would it be Turdy McTurdy Face?
Yeah, something like that. Oh man. And Jimmy from NASA said Mechanicong because that movie also came out in 1967. So a lot of movies in 1967.
Yeah, 67 was a good year for giant monster movies for sure because Gamera versus Gauss came out in the same year as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, that was a really good year when it came to kaiju films. And then finally, the Monster Island board of directors said a creature from an undisclosed place that is currently being kept on our beta site for further study. The movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. Well, that seems like a really long-winded title to me, but all right.
I'm also really scared about what they're keeping on that beta site and what they're going to do with it.
I'm terrified.
Yeah. Well, the answer to the trivia question was The X from Outer Space. It is a movie directed by Kazuki Nihomatsu. Starring Toshiya Wazaki, Itoko Harada, Shinichi Yanagisawa, and Eiji Okada. And all of those are Japanese names, so I'm missing someone. Who am I missing?
You're missing our two American / German actors and actresses.
Yeah, let's see. We've got Peggy Neal as Lisa and Franz Gruber. How can I forget Franz Gruber? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, as Dr. Bierman.
Just had this discussion, Travis.
Yes, that is my favorite fact, and I know we're getting into fun facts early. My favorite fact about this movie is that the guy who plays the main scientist, German scientist in this, his real name is Franz Gruber. I love it. I love it so much.
He was also in Die Hard for anyone else out there that cares. Before we go any further, Travis, I have to ask you this for the sake of the podcast because its existence depends on it. We are coming up on the holiday season. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Look, I don't celebrate Christmas, so no movie is a Christmas movie to me.
Fair enough. I view it as a Christmas movie. If anyone out there listening wants to fight me about that, they can via Twitter. My Twitter handle is Kaiju Groupie Pod. Fight me there. Die Hard is indeed a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the question. I have so little interest in that debate that I really just don't care. It's a good movie. Who cares? Now, if you want to talk about whether Gremlins counts as a Christmas movie, now that I will talk to you about.
It's a good question.
It is.
There is technically a giant monster in that one. Or was that Gremlins 2 with the giant spider?
Gremlins 2 has
the giant spider. Yeah, giant. Okay, so that's Gremlins 2. So I would consider that a giant monster movie, but not Gremlins 1. But we're getting way off. Why are we getting off topic, Travis?
I have no idea. But I do want to. Okay, well, while we're on this topic, though, I do want to say I'm going to leave it up to our listeners. Tweet at Kaiju Weekly and let us know. Do you want us to cover things like the Chuds, Critters, Gremlins, things like that on this podcast? Because they're not giant monsters, but kaiju is kind of a broad term. So it could fall into the category of kaiju if we wanted it to. We could make it work. So tweet at us. Let us know.
I mean, We've covered worse movies on this show for sure. And if we were called the Kaiju Weekly, then it wouldn't count. I if we're going to cover critters, I kind of wish we would have called it Kaiju Weekly, but I digress.
So the plot breakdown for the X from outer space, that's what we're talking about this week, is when a crew of scientists returns from Mars with a sample of space spores that contaminated their ship, the sample escapes and grows into an enormous rampaging beak monster. So, let's talk about our opening thoughts on this movie. And Michael, keep yours short because I have a thought. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. What are your opening thoughts on the X?
Okay, so I have no nostalgia. Like, this is one of the few giant monster films that I have zero nostalgia for. And when I say zero nostalgia, I mean I didn't see this movie until probably last year is when I first saw this movie. After I had blown through all the Toho films, I'd blown through all of the Godzilla films, most of the Gamera films. I was trying to expand my palette for giant monster films, so I watched this one. And honestly, I'd heard so many people tell me that it's a horrible movie, and I'm going to say you're wrong because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'll tell you why. Yes, the special effects are not up to par with, say, what even Toho and Daiei was doing at that time. But my God, did they put a lot of effort into this. The monster design is great. This movie excels on its embracing of its... I don't know if it did this intentionally or not, but it is wonderfully cheesy and wonderfully campy. And I love every second of this movie.
Okay, so I'm just like you. I have no nostalgia for this movie. This week, watching it for the podcast, was my first time watching this movie.
You texted me, it was like, what am I watching?
You're right. I'm like,
you're watching a movie, Travis.
Yeah, I'm the first.
You're watching a movie, Travis.
Like, oh, so I have seen people talk about this movie, and I have seen people mention, that it's not that great of a movie. It's kind of bad, and you know what? I'm going to agree with them. I did not enjoy this movie. No, that is an oversimplification. There are things I do like about this movie, but I will say this. Mm-hmm. This movie is boring. This movie is so slowly paced.
Oh, come on.
G-Man on Twitter talked about Gamera versus Barugon and how that had like the pacing of a dying sloth crawling through molasses or something like that. And I'm like, dude, this movie is that. This movie has a slower pace than even Gamera versus Barugon. It is so you could have cut out 40 minutes of this movie and it still would have been fine. It feels like an hour and a half long episode of Ultraman from '66, like the Showa era Ultraman. Not necessarily a bad thing because there are, Ultraman is fun, but when you stretch that out to an hour and a half, oh man, this movie. And part of it might just be because I struggled to watch this. My internet speeds for some reason all week have been really bad. Mm-hmm. And so every time I go to watch this movie, I would have to wait like 20 extra minutes for it to buffer so I could watch it. And so I am just like, by the time I get to the end of this movie, I'm like, please just kill the monster or kill me, one or the other. I am just so ready to be done with this movie.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna push back on you, Travis, and ask you: Is your unenjoyment of this movie, is it purely situational? If you hypothetically, if you were to watch this with good internet and seen it all the way through without the buffering, would you have enjoyed it more?
I feel like I would have enjoyed this movie more if I watched it with another person. Because this feels like it feels like the giant claw or something like, or even like some of the Showa era Gamera films.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not like in quality. It's definitely better than that in quality. But I mean, just in the sense of your enjoyment, you can enjoy this movie more from the group experience of just all sitting and having a laugh, because it is cheesy. It is absolutely a cheese fest.
Right.
Now, I don't think that it embraces the campiness enough. I think that one of the things I like about the Showa Gamera films, and why I am a big defender of the Showa era of Gamera, is because Gamera embraced the campiness. You know, you watch a Showa era Gamera, you're basically watching a 1966 Batman episode. They embrace the campiness, they embrace the silliness. In this, they didn't do that. They didn't embrace the campiness or the silliness enough to make it interesting. And the characters were so wooden and so uninteresting that I'm just like, it just was so slow.
I actually found the human drama to be quite interesting. So the love triangle stuff was okay. That was campy, but it was interesting. It's something that we don't get to see in a giant monster movie all that much. And I actually, although they have their flaws, they definitely have their flaws. I actually enjoyed this cast of human characters, especially Lisa. I thought she was a strong female character. Honestly, I had to. I sent you that text message the other night, and I said, "What did I say?" I said, "Oh, she's only here for one reason." But I had to retract that because she's actually quite smart, and I'll tell you. And she actually had some good lines in the movie too. I can specifically think of one where. What is it? Hans Gruber's character. He's bitching about. Oh, sorry. He's complaining about not being able to eat his dinner, and
that's
something.
That's not Hans Gruber. No, you're thinking. Okay, so here's the thing. There's two German scientists. I do want to say this because I think we got the wires crossed. There's two German scientists here. There's Dr. Stein and Dr. Behrman. Now, Dr. Stein is the one you're talking about, who's the complaint. Now, that's not Franz Gruber. He was played by Mike Dancine. Franz Gruber is the one that stayed on Earth, that had the evil kind of Vincent Price goatee thing going.
Yeah, he had the Shakespearean, like the artist goatee. Okay, so I'm getting I did. I got my wires crossed there on my American / German actors. But her dubbing was not great. I will say that. I will admit that her dubbing was not great. And I think that's what took me out of sort of her acting. Is just because I did watch it. I did watch this dubbed. I tried to watch it subbed too, but my main problem that I had with watching it subbed was it's so beautifully silly that, like, when you watch it subbed and you know it's trying to take itself seriously, it's hard to watch it because it is inherently silly. But I enjoy this movie watching it dubbed because it is so campy and cheesy. But anyway, honestly, Lisa was my favorite character because she did not get the recognition she deserved. I will go on record to say she did not get the recognition for her being a biologist, some other kind of scientist, and a chemist. I think is her third. She was three things in one. And she was treated just like every other damsel in distress in a giant monster film.
Now, I will say I did really enjoy Lisa's character, especially by the end. She was really good. She started off kind of as just eye candy, but then she really came into it and proved her worth in the movie.
Yeah, that's when I sent you that text message when I said she's only here for one reason. And I feel like that was premature when I said that because I was only like 10 or 15 minutes into the movie when I said that. And then as the movie progressed, her character got better. And by the end of the movie, she was still my favorite. She was my favorite character.
Yeah, definitely. I think she is actually my favorite character. Now, I do want to talk about, I'm going to steal, while we're in our likes and dislikes, this is where we're getting into our likes and dislikes. I want to steal a segment from our friends over at Monsters vs. Men. and I want to do one of their rewards and say the best acting award, or what was it? Coolest character. No, I can't believe that acting. I want to do that. I can't believe that acting award. And I'll see what you think.
Okay.
Who your can't believe that acting award goes to. But mine goes to, now, listeners, this is in no way trying to be prejudiced, trying to be insensitive in any kind of way. But the one black guy in the entire movie, there's only one black guy in this entire movie, and he appears on the moon station. And his one contribution to the entire movie is someone asks him a question, he shrugs, and then walks off screen. It is the best. Like, I am so glad you're in this movie. I love you. He's such a he sticks out like a sore thumb, being the only black guy in this entire. And the majority of people on the moon station are shorter Japanese people, and here's this tall black man standing alongside them, and then he just and walks away. And it's like, you are the best. I love you. I want to know what your backstory is. I am more interested in you than any of the crew of that ship, minus Lisa, because the captain is not interesting to me. The captain was a plank of wood with googly eyes drawn on it. He is uninteresting. The comedic relief character was not funny, not interesting, and the other guy got sick and didn't do much. So no one else on the crew was interesting. But that one character, that black guy who just shrugs and walks off screen and never to be seen again, I am so intrigued by him.
Okay, so that was I know exactly the scene you're talking about, because it's the moment after God, her name escapes me, but the young woman who runs the moon base,
Mochiko,
after.
Mochiko.
Yeah. After she walks from the control station into that back area, and I know exactly the scene you're talking about. It's just is really funny. For me, my can't believe that acting award has to go to Lisa. Again, my favorite character in this entire movie, because she's not a plank of wood. With when she gets her leg caught under the debris, and again, I watched the dubbing, and the dubbing for this is. It's hilarious. I'm just going to say it is hilarious. Like the dubbed version I watched anyway. I watched, I think not the AIP, but the international dubbing. So it's this overly dramatic screaming and wailing as she, and I know this sounds terrible, audio listener. I'm laughing at someone else's pain here, but you just have to watch this movie. You have to watch this movie. You have to watch the international dub of this movie to really understand what I'm saying here. It is hilarious because it is so forced, it is so cheesy, and it is so fake, and it is so over the top. I could not help but love it so much. And her facial expressions are the best.
Now, just talking about Lisa's character again, comparing her to the movie that came out the same year that this one did, comparing her character to the character, and I can't even remember the character's name, but from King Kong Escapes, the main female character in that. Her character in that movie is so uninspired. No, that's not the right words. She really just doesn't do much. She has no real agency. She is being whisked away from plot point to plot point by the events of the movie or by the characters around her, and just really has no really just like say so in what's going on with her with her like story arc, for lack of a better word. Whereas Lisa in this movie feels so much better. Like she has agency, she has interest, she has, she's, while being a scientist, she's not overly, overly analytical. She's also fun. She also enjoys things. She enjoys food. She, like there's so much going on with this character that it feels like she was the one that they wrote for, and then they just threw everyone else away because, and they literally threw one of them away because the doctor that you were talking about, the one that was a real jerk from the moon base, the other German, the one, Dr. Stein, he appears in one key scene in this entire movie, and it's one of the main scenes, you know, where they find the spore that turns into the monster Gilala, and then disappears for the rest of the movie. Like, just is nowhere to be seen. So yeah, they just literally threw him away. But yeah, so
yeah, he was just off living his best life, man.
Yeah,
he was just off living his best life.
So I want to talk about, now we've talked about some of the things that we liked in this movie, specifically, you know, the Lisa's character. That was our main like, but let's get into some of our dislikes, because I really want to talk about some things for this movie.
For what this movie is and what I feel like it was trying to accomplish, I feel like it accomplished it. And I really had a lot of fun with this. And there's not a whole lot I don't like about it, because I appreciate it for what it is. But I'm going to let you go into that. I'm going to let you throw some negativity lettuce or negativity onions on this positivity sandwich.
Okay. Well, I mean, my chief complaint, I still don't think they really embraced the campiness of it. I know you're saying it, but I really just don't think they did. I don't know. I feel like I'm still on the side of, I feel like this movie would have been more enjoyable to watch with a group of people, like we did with Kaiju Quarantine. It would have been good to watch on Kaiju Quarantine, because there were so many times when I could have thrown out a joke or thrown out something, or someone else could have thrown out a joke. You know, the fact that every other space mission that they've sent towards Mars has failed, and they're sitting there listing out this to the 4 people they're planning to send on this same mission. And it's like, yeah, but we're going to take another crack at it. So you guys load up into that rocket and take off and go on this, you know, mission that everyone else we've ever sent on has died. And it's so ridiculous. This movie, and one of the things I'll get into my negatives in just a second, my real negatives, but this movie is such a time capsule of the 60s, because they are so gung-ho about drinking and partying. It's like, we've made it to the moon, let's have a party and drink. We're back on Earth, let's party and drink. And then they're going to the hotel to have a nightcap and probably have a party. And when Gilala attacks and wakes up and attacks. So it's like, it's such a 60s era of just, let's have a martini and dance.
Yeah, I like the light. I really enjoyed the light-hearted nature of this movie, though.
But I don't think
that's probably
really
one of the that's probably one of the main things.
Intentional. I don't think they intended it to be lighthearted. That's the problem.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That is a fair assessment, because you are right. There's a lot of sequences of like cocktail parties and just as soon as they're getting dressed up and going drinking, and it's really awkward because all the women in this movie are dressed up in the lounge area, and all the other guys are still in their spacesuits, and it just looks weird to me. It's definitely got a 1960s.
Although Lisa looked killer in that blue dress that she was wearing on the moon, that was an excellent look.
It was very classy, I will say that.
It was.
But I really love the 1960s lounge lizard. I guess that's the right word to use. Like the loungy kind of jazzy feel to it. I really like it because, like you said, this movie is a time capsule. It is definitely a time capsule of its era of which it was made. I love like the retro futurism of this movie. I love that this is what people thought that space travel and moon bases and giant monsters and things looked like for that time. In fact, the only negative I have about this movie, the only major negative, is I feel like when I tell someone about like giant monster movies, right? I feel like, and I'm all excited about like, yeah, do you like giant monster movies? I love giant sci-fi, like old sci-fi movies, blah, blah, blah. I feel like this is the kind of movie that people think of when I say giant monster movie. The cheesy, campy guy in a rubber suit, giant monster movie. That's probably my only negative because it does lean really heavily into those stereotypes that people make fun of for these types of movies. But, you know, again, it does it in a fun way. I love the campiness. I'm with you, Travis. I wish they would have really leaned even harder into the campiness. There are some moments, especially that scene where there's a breach in the outer in the ship, right? And and everyone's like pretending like they're trying to be sucked outside of the ship, right? Mm-hmm. It's so comical and so cheesy and just so charming that it's really hard for me to dislike it, honestly. Before you get into more of your negatives, because you're a little bit low, you're not as high on this movie as I am, but what did you think about I know we may get into this later, but what did you think about Gilala himself or itself?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I was going to finish up my negatives and then get into finish it off with some positives about the monster.
All right, go ahead.
So my only other negative that I just wanted to highlight real quick was just the music. I couldn't stand the music. The music was so awful. And I'm all for weird poppy kind of or like 60s 70s whatever kind of music thrown into a monster movie, because I do like that in some of the Godzilla movies, but it didn't work. It did not work in this movie. The music just was so awful. The choices they made in it is so bad. Anyway, so talking about Gilala himself as the monster, I like the design. I really, really do like the design. I like the head. I like the way that it feels like an Ultraman monster, but feels it feels familiar because it is that, bipedal dinosaur looking thing, almost like a Godzilla type monster, but also different enough to where it's not like just a Godzilla ripoff. So I do enjoy the design. Right. I don't like the puffy arms. I think the puffy arms are a little too much. So if they dialed back the arms some, but everything else.
It's almost like he's got one of those Victorian era puffy white shirts on.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what I know they have a name, but I cannot think of what their name is. But yeah, it's sort of like that.
It's like a Jacobean era, style, Elizabethan style almost. It is. I don't like the puffy shirt or the puffy sleeve things that he's got on his arms. Other than that, I do like the design. So what do you think of Gilala?
I like it for its uniqueness. Like there's no other monster that I can think of like this out in like the kaiju sphere. There is definitely not another monster like Gilala out there at the time of this film being made. Maybe there, like you said, there may have been some Ultraman monsters that come close, but this was 1967, so I want to say that's Ultra 7. And I don't remember any monsters in Ultra 7 that looked like this. So Gilala was definitely unique in that respect. And I really like the design. It stands out to me as one of the most interesting kaiju designs. And I really wish that like another studio would get a hold of this property and redo it. Mm-hmm. Just because I would love to see an updated version of Gilala. I mean, it's fun because it's got that reptilian body. It's got those big buggy eyes. It's got a head shaped like a spaceship. I mean, what is there not to love about this monster? I will say that this entire movie, and this monster especially, does feel very Ultraman-like, or even maybe not even Ultraman, but just some other. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but it does feel like it belongs more on a made-for-TV movie, or a made-for-TV science fiction series, or even Star Trek, or even 1966 Star Trek, other than a feature full-length film like it was made.
I think that's the point I'm trying to get to when the way I'm talking about it. Like, I don't think this movie's awful, and so I hope that my dislikes and my negative talking made it feel like I absolutely despise this movie. I don't despise this movie. The biggest issue I have with this movie is the pacing, which would be fixed if this movie was only a 30-minute long episode of something. Like, this feels like an Ultraman episode. Like it should be an Ultraman episode. And if you cut out 40 minutes of this movie, because there are moments, like even the part you were talking about with Lisa under the rubble, it drags on. It drags on for so long. And then the monster, Gilala, attacking the cities and stuff, some of that drags on for so long that it's just like, I just want this movie to finish, get to the point already. And so, yeah, I think you're right. This movie would work better as a TV show, or as an episode of a TV show.
Yeah, I think this movie probably would have been better served to have at least, I won't go as far as to say 40 minutes cut out of it, but maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, because it does really feel like if I was gonna put any kind of negativity out there, I was gonna say that it does kind of feel like we're watching two separate movies. Like, the first hour feels like its own separate film than the last 30 minutes, because we don't see Gilala until I think the last 30 minutes of the film, or even the last 20 minutes of the film is when we get the big reveal for Gilala coming out of the mountainside. Which is fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, the monster rampage and the monster stuff, it's a lot of fun. It's well done. But yeah, they could have cut out about 15 or 20 minutes of dialogue, or 15 minutes of build up, especially like maybe when they're on the moon base, because all of that just kind of lingers on for a little while, like them just kind of chit chatting in the lounge. And yeah, that kind of stuff could have been
the shower scene.
Cut out.
The shower scene drags on a little too long.
No, the shower scene was there to establish the tension between the two women, right?
Right.
That's the reason why that was there.
Yeah. Are you ready to move on to some fun facts, and then get into our final thoughts and in our scores?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Well, I have a few fun facts I wanted to share. So early drafts for this film featured gigantic, monstrous plants as the antagonist before Gilala was created to replace these abandoned creatures. So originally they were going to have these giant plant monsters. They scrapped that and went with Gilala. I think it was for the better. Because I think Gilala works as a good, as a monster. Of course, we can't talk about this movie without talking about the sequel. The sequel to this movie that was done, which, I mean, when was that? It was like in the 2000s, wasn't it?
Monster X Strikes Back. Yes, it was done in 2008.
2008. Okay, yeah. I was trying to see what the year was.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the Monster X Strikes Back. I haven't seen it either, so I'm interested in checking that out. But yeah, it's this is I couldn't talk about the fun facts about this movie without covering at least mentioning the sequel to it that was done.
Yeah, for sure.
Many years later. Another fun fact that we have is that Gilala was going to fight Gappa in a movie, the Triphibian monsters. They were planning on doing this sometime in the 1970s, but that it fell through, and so it never really happened. But there was going to be a crossover between this movie and Gappa, the Triphibian monster.
Now, Gappa is one film that I I don't think I've ever seen that one. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about that one also because a lot of folks consider it sort of like a Gorgo ripoff, or Gorgo was a ripoff of it. I don't know what order they came in, but I'm yet to watch Gappa or Gappa.
Yeah, I haven't watched that one either. I am interested. It is on our list to cover in the podcast in the future. So, the only other fun fact that I have is Hiroshi Fujioka plays a small part in this film as one of the moon station correspondents. You guys may not be as familiar with him, or you might, but he was best known for playing the original Kamen Rider, the actual first Kamen Rider that started the whole franchise. He was that character, and he played a small part in this movie before doing that. So there's a nice little tie-in to Kamen Rider. Still working on my spin-off podcast that I'm hoping to get to at some point. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yeah. So that was just a few fun facts I found. I couldn't find too many, but I just found those few and wanted to kind of, touch on them. Let's get into our Godzuki scores and our final thoughts. So, for anyone who is new to the podcast, we like to rate our movies out of 5 Godzukis instead of 5 stars or anything like that, because we like to embrace the silly side of monster movies sometimes. Apparently, I'm not feeling up to embracing the silly side this week. And so we use Godzuki as our yardstick for rating our Godzilla movie or our giant monster movies. So, Michael, out of 5 Godzukis, how many do you give The X from Outer Space?
I'm going to go ahead and give this film 4 out of 5 Godzukis, because apparently this film, as far as this podcast is concerned, is my Night of the Lepus or my Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, because I adore this film. It is it's fun. It's campy. The only drawback that I see to this film is you kind of already have to be invested in the giant monster genre anyway to really appreciate it. Because if I was to show this to, say, my wife or a friend of mine who I would consider like a normie who's not into this whole genre, who's not into giant monster films or this type of film or this genre of film rather, I don't think that they would enjoy it. But for me personally, I really, really liked it. And like I said at the top of the show, Travis, I don't have any nostalgia for this movie. I don't recall seeing this movie on any television network growing up. And that's and I watched a lot of science fiction and a lot of monster movies growing up, but I do not remember this film. So I'm coming off of this brand new with fresh eyes, and I actually had a lot of fun with this. I did. I would recommend this again to someone who's already invested in the giant monster genre. Yes, the characters are a little bit flat. Yes, there's only maybe 2 or 3 little standout characters in this movie, as we've pointed out already. But the monster design is fun. It's just a fun movie and a fun concept. And it's wonderfully, beautifully cheesy and campy, and I love it. So yeah, that's why I'm giving it 4 out of 5.
Yeah, this is definitely your Night of the Lepus, because that's exactly how I would describe this. You actually asked on Twitter what were some people's thoughts and general feelings about this movie, and we did have a few people respond. So I just wanted to highlight the Giant Monster BS guys. They said the visual style of the movie is pretty fun, but everything in this movie has been done better in similar films from the same era. I don't disagree with that. I think that, you're not getting anything groundbreaking in this movie. It's been all done before.
No.
But Danny DeManna, you mentioned Danny earlier from the Godzilla novelization project. He actually says he adores this cheesy little flick. That said, I think it's actually less cheesy than its reputation would have many believe. The sci-fi world it creates is delightful and unique. The scope is ambitious, and Gilala itself is imaginative and just plain fun, and so is the movie. So there is some appreciation for this film, at least coming from the kaiju fan base. My score, my Godzuki score, is a 3 out of 5. I don't hate this movie. I know it sounded like I did because I was kind of negative on it. I don't hate this movie. My main complaint is just the pacing. I think the pacing is just not good. It's definitely need to be edited down some and changed around for the pacing. But outside of that, the film is serviceable as a retro sci-fi monster flick. It does, to me, it lacks the quality of a Godzilla film. So like the technical aspect that Godzilla films and Toho usually brings. And I think it's lacking the charm that you might get from something like Gamera. I don't feel the charm. I don't feel the quality. I don't feel the characters were all that interesting. I did enjoy the monster design. It feels familiar, but not like a Godzilla knockoff. But overall, the characters were not engaging. The pacing was excruciating. And I say that you should only watch it if you are a diehard monster movie fan. Otherwise, skip it.
And that is perfectly fair. Perfectly fair. Like I said, this is definitely my Night of the Lepus.
Yeah, I can see that. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you enjoyed it, hey, that's great. I will say there is a reason this movie is in the Criterion Collection. So, maybe there's something to it that I'm just not seeing.
It kind of surprises me, honestly. I would expect maybe Arrow to pick this one up other than the Criterion, but this has been on the Criterion Collection for a while, since at least 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's going to be it for our review of The X from Outer Space. This is the second, our penultimate episode of Space Monster September. Next week will be the final episode of Space Monster September, and we are looking forward to that. But we'll talk about that after we get to our next segment. And do you know what the next segment is?
The mailbag.
The mailbag.
What's in the mail today?
And if you want to reach out to us, you can do that by emailing us at kaijuweekly@gmail.com. We're also at kaijuweekly on Twitter. That is the best ways to reach us if you want your letter read out on the podcast. I keep making the joke that we only have 3 listeners to this podcast. We only have like 3 listeners. And someone emailed in to say that he was the 4th listener, officially the 4th listener. So,
woo, we have 4 listeners.
Yeah, so we have 4 listeners. He also asked the question. He also asked 2 questions, one for me and one for you. So, Michael, starting with you, what are your feelings on butt rocket kaijus? This person is also a Monsters vs. Men Patreon supporter because that is a reference to that.
Oh boy. Okay, so I know I don't even have to look at the notes to know where this came from, honestly, because I don't think you actually said.
No, I didn't actually.
Because I remember having this conversation. So thank you, Elijah, from the Kaiju Conversations podcast. My feelings toward kaiju butt rockets, they are explosively wonderful.
Wow. See, every time somebody brings up the butt rockets at kaiju thing, it just reminds me of how I still haven't been on the Monsters vs. Men Plus Patreon episodes yet. I haven't been on any of them, and it just, it just kind of hurts a little bit, that Eric wouldn't invite me over.
Your time will come, my friend. Your time will come.
Eric, I have opinions about kaiju with rockets that shoot out of their butts. Invite me on. Anyway, we're going to have an explicit tag on this one.
Oh boy. Okay, so that's one way to beg to be on someone's episode.
Yeah.
Or to beg to be on someone's podcast.
It's like, look, anybody who's listening to this, if you have your own podcast, I have many opinions about monsters and whether or not rockets should shoot out or into their butts. So please invite me on, and I will have my own TED Talk moment about that.
Travis, you realize that I'm the one editing this episode this week, correct? Because you know I'm going to leave that in.
I know. That's gonna be the cold open for the episode.
It very well may be. I was just sitting here thinking to myself, what could I insert as the cold open? But I'm glad you said that, Travis.
So Elijah also in his email asked me specifically the question, if given the money, would you do a sequel to Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century called Yeti 2, The Nipples' Revenge? This episode's going to need an explicit tag. Yeah, Elijah knows how much I am obsessed with the Yeti Giant of the 20th Century. That movie, I cannot wait for us to cover it on this podcast because, oh man, that was one of my favorite moments from Kaiju Quarantine was, I was going to say, I was going to put it politely and say introducing it to my friends, but really forcing all of my fellow kaiju enthusiasts to sit through this movie. But absolutely, I would see a sequel to this. And if I had the money, I would definitely make a sequel to this movie because I love it.
Your love of that film is borderline unnatural.
Yeah.
At this point.
I think, okay, so I will say this because I make a lot of jokes. We have a lot of fun on this podcast, listeners, but it's time to be serious here.
I couldn't tell at all.
Yeah, I know.
Here we go.
But it's time to be serious, you guys. The reason I love the Yeti Giant of the 20th Century movie so much is because I did not know this movie existed until February of this year, when both Gargantucast and Tokyo Lives both put out episodes on the same day reviewing this movie. And hearing them talk about it and hearing them describe what happens in the movie made me so interested in seeing. I'm like, I have to see what they're talking about. And it is just one of those ones that's like, you have to see to believe what's happening in this movie because it is so bizarre. So ever since then, I have been just like, I have to spread the word of Yeti. I have to make sure more people are aware that this thing exists, because once you have the knowledge that Yeti, the Giant of the 20th Century, exists, you then have the burden to share it with others.
It's a terrible movie. Terrible movie. But it's so bad. It is so bad. And it gives Travis so much joy. I'm going to have to watch this movie again for this podcast because it gives Travis so much joy that I'm going to participate in his suffering, or I'm going to suffer and he's going to laugh at my suffering. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, I'm going to have so much fun. I don't suffer watching Yeti. I love that movie. That movie is so much fun. It's so ridiculous. I love it. And of course we're going to review it on this podcast because that's our Christmas episode. Don't you know? Because nothing says the joy of Christmas like a giant Yeti with an inflatable nipple. That's why they sing the Christmas carols about it. It's like, Yeti, the giant nipple, had a really... No, never mind.
I'm beginning to believe, Travis, you know nothing about the Christmas holiday.
I already said don't celebrate Christmas. It's like oh Yeti nipple. It just
Maybe that'll be my cold open.
Thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Elijah, for emailing and for being our fourth listener. Although I think officially you're like our second listener, and we've had a couple more after you. But thank you for always supporting the podcast. And so, to close out this episode, we're going to ask the trivia question for next week's episode. What film is based on a 2014 novel by Jeff Vandermeer? And we will also have a very special guest for that episode. We're going to have Destiny, aka Kaiju Hime, from Twitter. You may know her. She does a lot of artwork, really great artwork, kaiju-related artwork, but she also has a Kickstarter that's going to be ramping up soon, and we're going to talk more about that on next week's episode. That's why we're having, not why, but that's one of the things we're going to talk about when she's on. I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I am looking so forward. I've heard Destiny on other podcasts before, and she sounds like a real pleasure to talk to and to listen to. So I'm looking forward to it too, Travis.
Yeah, and she has also read the novel by Jeff Vandermeer that inspired the movie that we're going to be talking about next week. So she has the knowledge that she's bringing to this discussion as well. So I cannot wait for that. So before we head out, we just want to say thank you to everyone for listening and sharing this podcast with your friends. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Kaiju Weekly and at Kaiju Groupie Pod. All the links to our social media, as well as for the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group, are in the description of this episode. You can send questions, comments, or answers to the trivia questions to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. We also want to say a big thank you to Alex, Shijir, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. You can also support the podcast at patreon.com/kaijuweeklypod.
And all that sounds great, Travis, but there's one more thing that people can do to support this show, and that is by going to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a 5-star review. Like I say every week, criticize us all you want in the comment, but make it 5 stars worth. And we promise we will read your feedback on a future episode. And what that's going to do is that's going to help put this show in front of other kaiju and tokusatsu fans just like you. It's going to propel this show to new and exciting heights. And most importantly, it will hopefully make us popular enough to where Travis can finally go see the goo.
The goo. I must see the goo. And yes, we also have a new review, a 5-star review that we can read out for this week. And it comes to us from David, the Kaiju Apostle, from the Kaiju Apostle podcast. He says, there aren't many kaiju podcasts that get into news and happenings each episode, let alone on a weekly basis. But Travis and Michael do it well. This is a biased review, being friends with both and having had Michael on our show, but their rapport is great, and the show doesn't devolve into groupthink or ridicule, which is encouraging. Definitely great for those who are just trying to listen to people talk about giant monster movies, not dissect and analyze them to death. And then he says he's guilty of that because that is one of the shticks of the Kaiju Apostle podcast, which is great because we need kaiju podcasts of all kinds, ones to overanalyze them, ones to really dig into the philosophies of it, and then us who just like to play around and just have fun.
Exactly. And we love the Kaiju Apostle. Thank you, David, for your review. And also, before I forget, congratulations on being around for exactly 1 year. They actually celebrated their 1-year anniversary for their podcast, along with his co-host, Chris, last Monday with their Hedora episode.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We've got a lot of podcasts that are coming up to 1 year. We got Kaiju Apostle, we got Monster Island Film Vault, Monsters vs. Men, all of these ones, and we are coming up on our 1 year anniversary as well. So,
Ooh,
yeah, we got something special coming up for that. Anyway, so that's going to be it for this week. So to close out the episode, I'm going to say, help control the space alien population, have your gilalas spayed or neutered. Oh, Yeti nipple.
Before they turn into... Oh, sweet Jesus.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.